Hello and welcome to this week's Securicy webinar. My name is Russell Radzikowski and I am the Customer Success Manager at Securicy. In last week's webinar, we covered the topic of hardening your Windows laptop or desktop. This week, we are going to cover understanding and best practices on preventing social engineering. In order to prevent possible cybersecurity incidents, you need to understand the attackers and types of attacks that exist. Social engineering is one of the most common and simple cybersecurity attacks that can happen today. These attacks focus on people who are usually the weakest link when it comes to a company's cybersecurity. Firewalls and antivirus software can be rendered ineffective if someone in your company clicks on a suspicious link and sends information or installs software that is malicious. Attackers exploit human psychology instead of breaking in or using technical hacking techniques. This allows even non-technical people to become attackers. Following the webinar, we will take a few moments to answer any questions you may have. So let's get started. On today's agenda, we're going to review the following topics. What is a social engineering attack? What is a phishing attack? The different types of attacks. How can you avoid becoming a victim? What to do if you think you are a victim. What is a social engineering attack? Social engineering is a type of cybersecurity threat that involves an attacker using human interaction to obtain or compromise information about a person, an organization, or computer systems. The attacker usually will appear to be unassuming and respectable. Oftentimes, they will claim to be a new employee, IT repair person, or government representative. So these attackers will sometimes offer credentials to support that identity. By asking basic questions or conducting some preliminary research, the attacker can piece together enough information to infiltrate an organization. If an attacker is not able to gain enough information from one source, they will contact another source within the same organization and rely on the information from the first source to add to the attacker's credibility. So what are some different types of social engineering attacks? So let's quickly cover some of the most common examples that we currently see today. Phishing, spearfishing, vishing, pretexting, baiting, tailgating, and a quid pro quo attack. So we'll go through each of these individually. What is a phishing attack? Phishing attacks are one form of social engineering. These attacks use email or malicious websites to solicit personal information by posing as a trustworthy organization or person. An example of a phishing attack would be an attacker sending an email that appears to be sent from a reputable company or financial institution and requests account information, oftentimes suggesting that there is a problem, you are required to make a payment, or that they in fact owe you money. When a user replies to that email with the requested information, attackers can then use it to gain access to that account. Phishing attacks will take advantage of current events and particular times of the year. Some examples include natural disasters. During Hurricane Katrina and the tsunami in Indonesia, there was a rash of phishing attacks in North America. Epidemics and health scares, economic concerns, or certain times of the year like tax season, IRS and CRA scams are very common during those periods, political elections, and holidays. The attackers will focus on these times of the year as people are less focused or are looking to help those in need, and they exploit that vulnerability. What is spearfishing? This is a form of a phishing attack. Spearfishing requires a little more information and effort on the part of the attacker. What they do is they use the basis of a common phishing attack that we just covered. After completing the attack, they will review all victims of that attack. They will then focus their next attacks on the few people who actually replied to that email and gave information. By paying attention to these results, they will have a more effective time as they retarget individuals who have already given information, and the chances of these users falling for false emails again are considerably higher. These attacks are more focused and less broad compared to a regular phishing attack. Vishing. Not all forms of phishing start online. Phishing attacks are based over the phone. Attackers will recreate an interactive voice response system, or IVR. These are usually things that you get when you call a bank asking you to input a number to get to the next section. These attackers will recreate these systems, usually with a toll-free number or an IVR system, and it will trick people into calling that number or entering their details into a fake IVR system. This attack has been in the news quite a bit lately, as attackers are pretending to be the IRS or the CRA, Canada's version of the IRS, and they use the fear of outstanding taxes or possible extra returns to get an individual to input their information into that IVR system. They then exploit that information, will take it and use it for their own malicious gains. Pretexting. Pretexting is another form of social engineering where an attacker will recreate a story or cover of who they are. Creating a good pretext, they then use this to steal their victims' personal information. Commonly, these attacks take the form of a scammer who claims that they need particular personal information from the target in order to confirm their identity. This type of attack is usually used to impersonate coworkers, police, banks, or tax service representatives. Usually they pretend to be an individual with perceived authority or someone that in the mind of the targeted victim has the right to know this personal information. The attacker will usually have a set of commonly asked questions that a victim may ask, so they will refer to these. Sometimes all it takes is an authoritative voice, great speaking skills, an honest tone, and an ability to adapt to create a pretextual scenario or modify that the one they are using. They will use this cover to get you to give up your personal information and then exploit it for their own gain. Baiting. This is a form of attack where attackers will leave an infected USB device or hard disk in a public place, hoping that someone will pick it up and out of curiosity, input it into their device. This USB or hard disk will contain malware, ransomware, or another type of attack vector that will infect the victim's computer. Other examples of baiting are not physical in nature. On a website, you'll sometimes see very vibrant links to download software or files will be displayed. These links can sometimes contain malicious software. Once the victim clicks that link, it will start a download or prompt for user information. The victim's device is then infected or their personal information is taken. Tailgating. This is a physical form of a social engineering attack. This attack relies on people with good manners. Certain organizations may have areas of the office or the entire office itself behind an access control system. This system requires an individual to swipe a card and gain access. Tailgating is when an attacker follows someone into the building after they swipe. These individuals sometimes will appear to be a delivery person or a new employee without a card. They will ask you to hold the door open for them or try to walk in behind you. Once they are now in, they have access to the building and they can try to gain access to devices or personal information that they can find. Quid pro quo attacks. This type of attack involves an attacker calling or emailing multiple members of a company and claiming to be that company's IT support. Eventually, they will find someone that has an IT issue and they will begin to exploit that individual. Quid pro quo is the form of attack where they exchange something with the victim or perceived exchange with the victim that they may be trying to solve your problem by getting you to install remote access software to gain access to your device. Or through troubleshooting your issue, they will ask for personal information that they can then use to exploit. How do you avoid becoming a victim? Educate yourself. Simple security awareness training, like today's lesson, is a great step for preventing common social engineering attacks. By understanding the different types of attacks, you are more aware of the different ways someone can try to phish you or use social engineering to exploit you. Always follow your organization's security policies. Your email policy, for example, should always cover the following: identifying the sender before opening an email or an attachment, double checking that an email address is accurate because hackers can misrepresent themselves or spoof someone you trust. You should always ask for IT's help in adjusting your email settings so that they can make sure that you always see the file type and extension of any attachment. This will allow you to make sure that the document you're receiving is a document and not an executable file, which could contain malicious software. Do not open suspicious email attachments. Any emails with misspelled subject lines or from an institution that shouldn't have your company's email address, you should not open those attachments at all. You should always report suspicious emails to IT. If you're following security policy, this will reduce the chances of a social engineering attack. Be suspicious of all phone calls, visits, or email messages that are unsolicited. They may be asking especially for information about employees or internal company information. If an unknown individual claims to be from a legitimate organization, try to verify his or her identity directly with the company. Do not provide any personal information or information about your company, including its structure and networks, unless you are certain of the person's authority to have that information. Do not reveal personal or financial information in email. Don't send sensitive information over the internet before checking a website security. Make sure that website is HTTPS. Pay attention to the URL of a website. Malicious websites may look identical to a legitimate site, but the URL may be slightly different. It might be .net instead of .com or .org instead of .ca. If you are unsure whether an email request is legitimate, try to verify it by contacting that company directly. Don't use the contact information on the website. If there is a website in the link in the email, try to find them and use the actual website if this one was spoofed. Install and maintain antivirus software, firewalls, and ensure that you have email filters to reduce the traffic of potential spam or malicious phishing emails. And take advantage of any anti-phishing emails offered by your email client. Lots of different browser plugins or support exists in your email account to reduce that email traffic arriving in your inbox. What to do if you think you are a victim? You should always follow your company policy. If you believe that you might have revealed sensitive information about your company or yourself, report it to the appropriate people within the organization. This is usually the security team or the incident response team or your direct manager. They can be alert for any suspicious activity or unusual activity on your accounts. And depending on the breach, they can investigate and remediate the issue quicker if you let them know. If you believe your financial accounts may be compromised, you should contact your financial institution immediately and close or put a hold on any accounts that may have been compromised. You'll want to watch for any unexplainable charges to any of these accounts. Immediately change any passwords that you might have revealed. If you ever use the same password for multiple resources, you should change it everywhere. You should probably not be using the same email or the same password, for any multiple accounts, and you should always have a unique password for those accounts. Watch for other signs of identity theft, so monitor all your other accounts and be on the lookout for any suspicious activity or things that you are not doing. Finally, consider reporting the attack to the police and file a report with the Federal Trade Commission. I want to thank everybody for joining us this week as we covered the topic of social engineering. Next week's webinar will be on the topic of how to back up your data and best practices on backups. So we can take a minute now to answer any questions that came up. All right, we have a question here. What type of information should you not give out? So anything that is personally identifiable information, so like your location, address, phone numbers, credit card or banking numbers, and then company information, any privileged work or company data, passwords, your social security information, even other people's email addresses, depending on who it is, you should be very wary giving out this information. What should you look for in suspicious emails? So you don't click anything if you ever get a suspicious email. Take a look around first. Don't trust the display name. You might see it coming from, say, Russell Smith. Check the actual email address it came from. So check to ensure that it's, russell@securicy.com and not russell@securicy or security.com.ca. That way you can verify who it's coming from, as they can sometimes spoof those display names. Check for any spelling or language issues in the email. If it's from a reputable source, there shouldn't be spelling or language mistakes. So that can usually be a clear sign that this email is out of the ordinary or a possible phishing attack. So watch for urgent email subject lines. They can try to take advantage of that urgency, and you'll not be focused on where that email is coming from or what is in that email. You'll be more focused on that as an urgent issue. So just take the time when you get an email and verify who it's coming from. Make sure that there's no spelling or language issues. Don't open any of the attachments. Make sure you can see the file extension on any attachment so you know it is a document and not an executable file. Any links, make sure that the link uses HTTPS. That's what you should be looking for in suspicious emails. And that looks to be it for our questions today. Again, I wanted to thank you once again for joining us. And next week's webinar will be covering the topic of how to back up your data and best practices on data backups.